it's definitely a struggle. Like it's definitely an entrepreneur's journey because you're turning from just someone who's collecting a paycheck to someone who's now running who's got a P&L. The highs are highs and the lows are so damn low sometimes. Like,
you're listening to On Work, the show all about independent entrepreneurship. I'm Shayna, your host and founder of Hello Generalist. On this pod, you'll meet tech professionals leaving the 9-to-5 to strike out on their own, plus experts and leaders in the space. We'll talk all about what makes fractional and consulting work actually work for operators, dive into solo founder life, and explore the portfolio of income streams that enables this life for everyone. Stick with us. Today, my guest is Harry Siggins, a longtime startup operator turned fractional chief of staff and OKR workshop leader. Fun fact, Harry is actually my partner in crime for Manual Override, which is a new program from Hello Generalist. Manual Override is a 6-week accelerator that we're running this summer for independents. You can go check it out at manualoverride.co. We recorded this episode before all of this came to life, but I think the interview gives you a really good sense of why he makes a great partner and really fun to work with. To share a bit about Harry's background, he spent his early career doing strategy and analytical consulting before totally jumping ship to startup land, where he joined TechStars to lead their Berlin accelerator. Later, he spent a very meaningful 5 years at Quantive as their chief of staff, where he took them from a 20-person startup to this 400-person global organization. You're going to learn a ton from Harry today, like as a generalist, how he structures his fractional and consulting work. He'll share practical tips for getting started, traps to avoid early on, and how he manages to ride this emotional entrepreneurial journey. I know you'll learn a ton from Harry and you'll really enjoy listening to him. So with that, let's just jump into the interview. I'm especially excited to chat with you because I consider you a friend through this whole Hello
that's
Generalist.
Perfect. Yeah.
I think we first met in a chief of staff community a few years back.
We did. Yeah.
Yeah. And back when I was chief of staff and you were chief of staff, and now we're both on this independent experimentation phase of
journey. Yeah. Whatever we want to call it. Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. I know. And though I've gotten to know you online and, through doing some work together, I haven't really heard your story. So this is kind of my very selfish chance to get to hear your story.
That's true. We met over, I think it was initially OKRs, which probably sounds is the culmination of my entire story. So yeah, that's a great segue into that.
Why don't you give a little bit of an intro on what you were doing professionally in that first chapter, and then so let's start to talk about what you're doing independently now.
For sure. I started in management consulting, which was so fun, but an incredible burnout because it's just 3 years of nonstop work. But I really enjoyed it, and then have transitioned into the tech world, connecting with startups and just helping them solve problems. Like I wish problem solver was a job title, which I guess it is in many cases, but that's what I just love doing. And majority of my career has been with a company called Quantive, which was called GTM Hub. And the title was chief of staff. But the funny story about getting that title was I remember sitting down with the CEO at the time, and we were basically like, what is it that I should be doing? And we need to give myself a title of some sort. Yeah. And that was the most general thing we could do. In a way that evolved over the course of 5 years at that company in that role. It started at, I think, around 20 employees, scaled to close to 500, went through different phases of transitions and things like that. And now I'm in a position where I'm fractional. So, yeah.
Yeah, the story of how you got the chief of staff title, I think there's so many aspiring chiefs of staff out there. And, we could talk a lot about this temptation to go about crafting your chief of staff career and applying for these jobs or trying to make a case for this very popular title. When in reality, my story is actually identical to yours. When I finally took on that role, we looked around at our leadership team and we said, chief of staff makes sense as
yeah.
Shayna's that now. And it sounds like that was the case for you too.
Funny story. I thought I was getting fired when that meeting started. It was a moment where I was in Denver at the time, and I was working with my friend and former colleague Adam, and we were basically in charge of like building up the US because the company was from Bulgaria. And this is the first time that the CEO was flying over, and we had our chief strategy officer flying over, and we're like, we don't know why they're coming over. They haven't told us. So this is likely our last day. And we were just kind of like hanging out there. And then the conversation started with, I don't know what to do with you. And then it just culminated to, you've been doing all this work outside of your role. It's great. We could use you elsewhere. What do we call you? And I think that's why it's kind of hard for me to give any advice for people in that role of how to get it, because you just start helping a founder solve a problem, and you do it in many different spaces and you land in that position. But that's way easier said than done.
Yeah. So there came this inflection point, though. You had an incredible run at Quantive, but then something changed for you where you decided to start exploring this independent work world. Set the scene a little bit. What was going on for you at the time? What was that inflection point that caused you to make the jump?
It was almost, I personally felt like I didn't know if the organization needed me at that time anymore. Over 5 years, I had run probably 6 different functions. I had this like hire myself, fire myself mentality of I'd go do this project for 3 months, or I'd build HR for 3 months, or I'd run growth for 6 months. Like the foundation had been set to the point where the value of what I was bringing before wasn't the same. And it was almost like I was trying to figure out where I could find value. And I found value in much more of the how can I connect with leaders to help them think more strategically, think about their problems a little bit differently. My last CEO at that company basically said like you'd be a great chief challenger officer, which I don't think I'm ever going to take that title, but it just gave me this moment of like, oh, there's much more than the tactical side that I can bring to the table. And at that point, then I started to think, well, I've always had this itch of wanting to do my own thing. I've never been technical enough to build a product. Even if I was, I'd have no idea what that product would be. But that sort of moment of like, okay, I can connect with leaders in a way that I didn't know I could, and I could help them solve problems in a way that's very natural to me. I can now go do something I really like doing, which is working with lots of different founders. Like I got to work at TechStars at an accelerator for 3.5 months in Germany, which that was the best time because it was just 10 founding teams and you get to work with all of them in one room at a time. And so I kind of treat this as that experience of just being able to like build my own accelerator experience again, working with great people, solving cool problems and doing it in a way that's just very natural to me.
You're a great representation of this trend of people that realize they're really quite good at a couple skills and then have the aha moment that like, oh wait, I can continue to do that for one company at a time. Or the way my brain is wired, what I'm motivated by is taking that skill and sharing it broadly. And that sounds like that was a motivating force for you to strike out on your own.
Yeah, there wasn't any particular burnout or anything with the situation I was in. I was like, yeah, I just feel like this is the moment.
And so what do you do? Like, what do you do fractionally? What do you do independently?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm still figuring that out. I could have a very curated answer, but that's not the reality of it. In general, what I try and do and what I'm very good at is just helping either the leaders who are focusing on turning strategy into something far more practical. So if you have a big idea or you're going through a big change, that requires a lot of momentum and building and even operating frameworks. And I help solve that problem of making it more of a reality than it can be today. I know a lot of companies, even I think you've told me before, like a lot of companies are allergic to strategy. So what I'm trying to do is take the principles of what's really good about it and just make it really digestible for people. So, yeah.
Totally. It's like the word strategy is big and scary, and like an early stage startup doesn't need a strategist.
No, it doesn't. No.
Yeah, to like do the thing, help us do the thing.
Yeah, and there's two ways that I think about it, which is there is the operating system behind it, and then there's the people who lead it. So the way that my work looks tactically is that I will go and help companies set up their operating framework for making strategy not suck. Like, how do we make it so that we don't spend half the year setting goals and then the other half doing it? How can we do more and plan less with data systems and even tooling on that level. But a lot of it is just the mindset of how do we approach this. And that comes in the form of consulting engagements and workshops. But then, being in that position for 5 years, I knew that like, I wish I had someone who was like a sounding board that was external. So now I also think about the people who actually run these things, now coaching them on being better leaders in that space so they can think about how do I actually enable a better system for me to set a big goal and get 50 people behind it, right? So it's this mix of operating systems and approaches to strategy execution in a small high growth space and the enablement and coaching for the leader. But in the portfolio career world, I also do like operational consulting for, or even just run operations for startups on the side. So like a portion of my time is just helping operators here in Seattle or globally just figure out how to actually run the business so they can focus on other things.
Like you kind of fit in the bucket of, hey, you can hire Harry as a fractional chief of staff. He'll come in and help you figure out how to get through a period of high growth. You've done work through the HG platform as like the first operations hire with a founder that really wanted to focus on product and growth and partnerships. Separately, you're doing consulting work where you can come in and with a limited engagement and help troubleshoot, set OKRs, figure out the system to do that. And then this coaching piece of how you work with ops leaders like chiefs of staff, like heads of ops to help them do this. So there's this big portfolio, but all under the same theme of you've got a great skill at helping organizations do this. And there's all sorts of applications of how you can work with someone to grow stronger there.
Yeah, it made it really hard when I was first starting as a fractional chief of staff. Well, I could do everything, but that doesn't help when you're like talking to someone about a specific pain point and what you can do to solve it. And saying, oh, I can solve it doesn't necessarily build trust. So a lot of the work in the past like 6 months of this journey is thinking about, well, what is something that someone can pick off a shelf and like really clearly understand, and what form can I deliver it confidently and in the way that I know I can. So whether it's like workshops or coaching or being very hands-on, it all fits into that same realm, but looks very different. So I know you're supposed to like niche down into like one thing, but I think I struggle to do that. But that's what I think every generalist like struggles with doing. So I don't feel too alone in that. Yeah.
No, definitely not. This episode is brought to you by Hello Generalist, where the startup community turns for fractional operations hiring, from fractional chiefs of staff and part-time COOs to data leads, recruiters, finance people, and so much more. Our pre-vetted US-based operations pros built their careers inside of high-growth startups and are now available for part-time contract hiring. So that means those people who used to cost you $180K and take 4 months to hire now cost you half and can start next week. These are people like Emily, who built community growth for The Wing and Rent the Runway, or Elliot, a 3-time startup chief of staff, or like Chris, a veteran startup CFO who's raised tens of millions in venture capital. Yep, they are all available for part-time hiring. Visit hellogeneralist.com to learn more. I'll take us back to that moment where you're leaving Quantive and you're thinking about working independently. Very practically, how did you prepare for that? Money-wise, what did that look like? If you live with a partner or roommates, what did that look like?
Yeah, I have given myself not like a time frame to figure this out, but I was like, first, just give myself the first year to just completely mess up. Like, just try everything, go meet people, go to events and see things, and then just budget for that. Like, just think of in the first year, can you live and operate without making a single dollar? That was the frame. And that does put a limiting factor, but it's also a bet on yourself of like, you have this itch for a reason. You should go bet on yourself. But I'm not going to dwindle my bank account to do this. But so I think over the course of a few months beforehand, I felt kind of I think when people transition out of job, they like lose touch with the current job they're in. Really, the first few months of me getting this idea at the beginning of 2024 was just, instead of thinking about the business and the business model and like what I would do, just like get the logistics in order. So like get the savings in order, save up a little bit more than usual. And that's all I put into that. So I could think more of where my like more strategic brain was on the business. So I wasn't doing them a disservice. And then as I then left April 2024. And then I gave myself like 2 or 3 months to just completely check out. I didn't try to think about work. I was just a mental checkout of how I prepared for that. And then, yeah, a lot of it was just experimenting with what works and what doesn't work. I probably spent too much time thinking about like LLC formation and website and brand when I have no customers. But it's a fun exercise to do. I live with my partner, my girlfriend, for a long time now, and she's a pediatric nurse. So she's never really understood my whole career, and I've never been able to understand hers. But when I was making this change, she was just like, "Yeah, just go for it." Like, very supportive of it. So I have her backing. We're able to pay rent, and that's great. So it's definitely a struggle. Like, it's definitely an entrepreneur's journey. I think there is this idea that, oh, you can earn more doing fractional work easily, and yes, you can, but there's a lot of legwork that goes into it and a lot of expenses that you don't think about that happens with that, because you're turning from just someone who's collecting a paycheck to someone who's now running like who's got a P&L and things like that. So I think the more upfront I'm glad I did all that sort of like logistics planning first and then get into the strategy work. But it did take longer than I thought. So
It's really sound framing to call this an entrepreneur's journey. The word fractional is everywhere on LinkedIn and thinky thought pieces all over the internet right now about how you can just take your career in this direction, which I think is true if you are willing to put on that entrepreneurial hat and, like you did, give yourself a reasonable buffer to be able to start that up. I love that your partner was in on it too. She was supportive. She was ready. You as a household have that foundation at home to make entrepreneurship the right thing for your family and the right thing for your shared bank accounts and all of that stuff.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's such an important logistical part of making this leap.
There's a massive like emotional toll to it too. Like, this journey is not for the faint of heart. Like, the highs are highs and the lows are so damn low sometimes. This week was pretty tough too, and you do really need that person, even if it's just a mentor, someone to be able to just kind of vent the frustration on. Because, while I am a generalist and I was a chief of staff for 5 years, there's things that like I had no idea about, and I thought I had some general idea that I'd figure it out. But now I'm in the weeds of it. I'm like, how the hell does anyone do this? Because it's like, I've never been in sales, never been in business development, and I'm learning all of this stuff. And it's like this overconsumption of information of like how to do this can be so overwhelming that you like put yourself in a vicious cycle of being very hard on yourself. And so having that support system of just someone to just vent to, they don't even have to understand anything you're saying. Like, Lauren's probably the most educated nurse on OKRs ever, because I've just been speaking about it for like 6 years straight. But she doesn't know how, she doesn't need to know any of that. She just needs to like understand where I'm coming from. And she's been a huge support for that. So I couldn't do it without a support system like her or my friends or family that are sort of helping me out.
You're referencing some of the tough lessons along the way. Are you at a place where you've got reflections on those lessons yet? Things that you are starting to internalize or starting to make different choices with now that you've gone through them?
There's a lot of different like experiments I can run, or like different ideas I can take on, or different things I can worry about. And I think it's okay to dabble in them. Like, so for example, like I've been trying to put out a lot of content on my website, like long form content. And then it's like, oh, what is SEO? I should probably figure that out, right? And then you start to go down these rabbit holes. And it's okay to know that that's there and you can educate yourself on those things. But to try and fix all of that and then everything else when that's not a priority is really hard. So it's a little ironic that like I was like getting distracted. Yeah, I'm the OKR guy. Like, that just doesn't make sense. Yeah, I've had to be way more stern on myself of just like figuring out what's worth diving into and what's not. So I've definitely learned to focus everything from what I do and how I present myself publicly, the types of work I want to be doing, the types of experiments I want to run with, the things that I want to do but maybe can't do right now. I've just been very much more like earnest about, is this actually worth my time right now, or can I delay it? So it's very much taking like less of an individual mindset and more of like, you are a business, like you have to now figure out what's of focus or not. It's been a bit of an interesting learning technique.
I'm thinking of something you said earlier in our chat about as you were getting started, the temptation to do the build a company work, which is like I'm going to focus on the right LLC formation and my brand and my website. Whereas, as we've all been inside startups, the real advice is you're starting a business, you got to get in front of customers, and you don't have a business till you have a customer, and it's not going to last you very long if you don't have several and aren't giving them a great product that solves a real problem.
Yeah.
So this lesson in and of itself of, as you were starting up, doing the work that feels really good, check a box on, but forgetting that core entrepreneurial lesson of, I gotta go talk to customers and sell
Yeah.
customers.
It's like one of those, it's like an avoidant thing. It's like I could do that really hard work that I don't know, but I could also just design a website for a day if I wanted to. Like, you should give yourself that understanding of, okay, yeah, this wasn't worth the time that I think I needed. I don't think that I have a perfect checklist of what I would give to someone else, but I would just give them the advice of like, you're probably going to fall in that trap. Like, that's the best advice. Is like, you're going to fall and find yourself in that trap. Don't be hard on yourself when you do, because that's going to be natural. Just know that you're in that space.
One of the hard to comprehend things about fractional work is that in the rest of the world, you need a full time person to solve hard, meaningful problems inside your company. And it's hard to make a mental leap to realize that no, actually, you can also solve hard, meaningful, real problems for your business with somebody that's part time. Is there a story or two from your work that kind of helps internalize that you can solve similar, meaningful problems part time?
Yeah, I'll tell you one story that also maybe goes to, you can solve problems in a way you didn't expect to with someone who's got a different skill set than what you might have. It was one of the earlier workshops that I've sold. I do sort of multi-day workshops around strategic planning for high growth companies, and it's sort of like that process can take weeks and months. I remember going into it and I was a bit nervous for it. It wasn't really the classic startup feel that I had. It was actually a high growth sort of consulting firm itself. And I remember going into it and I could see people buying into the whole product, because I was essentially bringing a whole new space and a whole way of problem solving, like in a facilitated designed workshop over the course of 3 days, which felt very new and unique for someone. And I remember sitting down, and then the CEO on like the end of the second day was like, "This has been extremely valuable. I didn't think we'd be able to get this much done." And then like someone else mentioned, like, what we could do in 3 days here is what usually takes 3 months. And so, similar to what you were saying about you can solve those problems, I think another twist on it is you may be able to find someone that can provide a service in a way that no one else in your organization has figured out how to do, and can dedicate 100% of their time to do it. And the unique thing was that organization had a chief of staff in the company. And it wasn't that they couldn't do it. It was almost that there's both like that internal pressure of, I've got to manage the workshop and this. And they're like, if I just dedicate this particular thing to someone else, it'll have a greater ROI than if I was in a chief of staff in that position before too. It's like, you got to organize everything and then you deliver the workshop. And it's like, this could have been better, right? If you could 100% get the thing that's going to solve the problem fixed, you might as well find someone that's going to spend 100% of their time doing that. So I think that's one thing. And then the other aspect, and this is more the ongoing work that I've been doing, is sometimes when you compress or have a constraint of time, people will solve a problem in a more scalable way. So they're limited in their time. So they don't have 40 hours a week to kind of just think about a problem, have a solution here. They're compressed with a timeline and a date to work with, and they have like, okay, I have to figure this out in this amount of time, and I can't be on the clock for it all the time. So how do I systematize this to scale? How do I use more innovative ideas to solve this problem than maybe someone who has the time to sit at a desk and like go through the motions with it? So I think it's just a little bit of a different mindset to how you want to solve the problem. Do you want to like accelerate it and have dedicated focus on it? Or do you want to see if maybe like putting a constraint on it actually gets you the results you care about in a more scalable fashion?
I like that language a lot. Well, Harry, where can people find you online? Where can listeners who might want to hire you or check you out or meet you, where do they find you?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'd say that's the best place to connect with me and message me, see the content I put out. Of course, you can check me out at my website at 12growth.com, or you can email me directly at harry@12growth.com as well. But LinkedIn's probably the way to go for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Harry.
Cool. Thanks, Shayna.
You can listen to more episodes of On Work on Spotify and YouTube, and be sure to subscribe to our Substack for weekly news right to your inbox. Until next time, I'm Shayna, and this has been the On Work Podcast.